When Emma said those words, the air in our living room froze. If you want touch, go to a spa. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The calm in her tone was sharper than any scream. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at her. The woman I'd shared 10 years of my life with, the one whose laughter used to fill our kitchen, was now looking at me like I was a stranger who'd overstayed his welcome. I swallowed, forcing down the sting of humiliation, and replied quietly, "If you want comfort, get a job." That was the moment everything broke. But this isn't where it started. The cracks had been forming long before that evening. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Emma and I met in college in Boston. She studied literature. I was an engineering major. She was magnetic, confident, charming, and fiercely independent. Back then, she talked about becoming a writer, traveling, and never needing a man for stability. I admired that about her. But somewhere along the way, her independence turned into indifference, and my patience into silence. For years, I worked late hours to build our life. Promotion after promotion, new house, new car. I thought I was doing the right thing, providing comfort so she could chase her dreams. But comfort became routine, and routine became resentment. At first, it was subtle. She stopped greeting me at the door, stopped asking how my day went. Then came the excuses. Headaches, stress, exhaustion. Every time I reached for her hand at night, what used to be affection turned into obligation, then avoidance. I told myself she was just going through something. Maybe she felt lost after leaving her writing behind. So I tried harder, planned trips, bought gifts, cooked dinner, even learned her favorite recipes. Each attempt was met with lukewarm gratitude and that same distant smile. Until one night, after another dinner eaten mostly in silence, I reached out and brushed my fingers against hers. She pulled her hand back like I'd burned her. "If you want touch, go to a spa," she said, eyes still fixed on her wine glass. The words sliced through me. I wanted to yell, to ask her what happened to us. But the anger that rose in my chest twisted into something colder. So I said the first thing that came to mind, "If you want comfort, get a job." It wasn't planned. It just spilled out. Her eyes snapped up, shocked. I'd never spoken to her like that before. For years, she'd chosen not to work. I never minded, my income covered everything, and I liked being the provider. But lately, her days had turned into endless lounging, scrolling through her phone, complaining about boredom. That night, after my words, she stormed out of the room. I thought she'd cool down, maybe we'd talk in the morning. But when I woke up, her side of the bed was untouched. I found her in the kitchen, already dressed, scrolling through job listings. The silence between us was louder than any argument. For a week, we barely spoke. Then little changes began. She started dressing up more, going out for errands. I wanted to believe it was for interviews, but deep down something felt off. One evening, her phone buzzed while she was in the shower. A message flashed across the screen. "Can't wait to see you again." My stomach turned. I didn't open it. I just stood there, staring at those words. They felt like confirmation of what I'd already suspected but refused to admit. That night, she came to bed smelling faintly of someone else's cologne. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing that the woman beside me was already gone. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't need to be hunted. It reveals itself when you're ready to face it. And that moment came sooner than I expected. 2 days later, a Saturday morning, I woke up to find Emma already gone. No note, no text, just her coffee mug on the counter, still half full, her lipstick smudged against the rim. I told myself not to spiral. Maybe she was running errands again. Maybe she needed space. But by noon, when her phone went straight to voicemail, the calm I was clinging to cracked apart. I drove to her favorite cafe, the one near the park where she used to write. Her car was there. Through the glass, I saw her sitting at a corner table, laughing. Across from her sat a man I didn't recognize. Mid-30s, sharp haircut, designer jacket. He leaned in, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and she didn't move away. My first instinct was to burst inside and demand answers, but something held me back. Instead, I took out my phone and snapped a photo. Not for revenge, not for proof, just to remind myself that this wasn't a dream. When I got home, the silence hit differently. Every room felt heavier. I stared at the framed photo of our wedding on the mantel, her smile bright, eyes full of warmth, and wondered when that version of her had disappeared. That night, she returned as if nothing happened. "Where were you?" I asked. She didn't even hesitate. "Out with a friend." I almost laughed. The calmness in her voice felt rehearsed. "Does this friend wear Armani?" I asked quietly. Her face stiffened. "You followed me?" "No," I said, "but I saw enough." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was heavy, thick with the unspoken truth. Then she sighed, as if tired of pretending. "I needed someone who listens," she said softly. "You stopped seeing me years ago, Ryan. You come home, talk about work, eat and sleep. That's it." I felt invisible. Her words stung because there was truth in them. But so did mine when I replied, "And instead of talking to me, you talk to him." She looked away. "He makes me feel alive." There it was. The final crack, the sentence that ended the story we'd been pretending to hold together. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just nodded slowly. "Then go be alive, Emma. But don't expect to come home when it stops feeling new." She blinked as if realizing I meant it. For a second, guilt flickered across her face, but it was gone as quickly as it came. She packed that night. No tears, no apologies. Just silence and the faint echo of her suitcase wheels on the hardwood floor. The next morning, I poured her untouched coffee down the drain. Felt like closing a chapter. Days turned into weeks. People at work noticed the change, how I stayed later, smiled less. My mother called often, worried. But somewhere between the quiet dinners and empty evenings, I rediscovered something I'd forgotten: peace. I started running again, something I hadn't done in years. I reconnected with old friends, picked up a photography hobby, and eventually learned to cook for one without it feeling lonely. Then, about 3 months later, I saw her again at that same cafe. She looked thinner, quieter, like someone who'd learned the difference between excitement and stability. The man wasn't with her. Our eyes met briefly. She gave a small, uncertain smile. I nodded politely and turned away. That night, she texted me, "I miss the way you used to look at me." For a while, I stared at the message. Then I typed back, "I did too, until you gave me a reason to stop." And that was the end of it. No dramatic closure, no second chances. Just two people who had once promised forever, standing on opposite sides of their own choices. Looking back now, I realized that moment when she said, "If you want touch, go to a spa," wasn't cruelty. It was truth disguised as arrogance. She had already detached, long before the words came out. And my reply, "If you want comfort, get a job," wasn't anger. It was the first sign of me reclaiming my self-worth. Sometimes, love doesn't end with shouting or betrayal. Sometimes it ends quietly, with one person rediscovering themselves and the other realizing too late what they lost.